On a Tuesday night in Mountain View, California, we welcome you to St. Francis High School and Alumni Gym as we get ready for a West Catholic Athletic League matchup between the St. Ignatius Wildcats and the St. Francis Lancers. Why don't we take a look at the WCL standings? And as you can see, both of these teams have struggled in the early going of league play. St. Francis coming in at 1-7 and St. Ignatius at 1-8. Alongside Mike Messner, Jack Benjamin on hand here on KMVT Sports. And, well, Mike, second meeting of the season now between these two teams. A 4-set win the first time around for St. Francis, and errors, especially on the serving side, a big problem for the Wildcats of St. Ignatius.
Well, the key thing about this league, Jack, is that you cannot make the kind of mistakes that St. Ignatius made. 7 unforced serving errors in just the first set. And you can't expect to have any success against the St. Francis Lancers if you're going to have that kind of record coming right out of the gate.
And as far as St. Ignatius goes, they often go as far as their outside hitter goes, and their star, John Alexander, an NYU commit, and he's been doing it all for St. Ignatius.
Well, there's no question that he has been the key to the St. Ignatius offense this year. And what we've heard from the St. Ignatius coach recently is that he wants to slow this game down. He wants to play the St. Ignatius game, not the St. Francis game. And the way that he wants to do that is to vary his offense, not be predictable, and to come in with a lot of confidence. And they're going to need it going against this Lancer squad.
You talk about not being predictable for St. Francis. Well, they're one option less now that Gerard Nelson, their star, is down. James Deneen, though, has stepped it up in a big way for them at the outside hitter spot.
Well, Deneen has absolutely had to do it. He is leading the team in kills and service aces, and his coach described him as a strong leader and a great competitor. But as you mentioned, he is in that position because one of his teammates went out with a shoulder injury. He'll probably be out for the season. He is headed to Princeton next year, so he's going to be a great cog in that offensive machine. But for tonight, it's going to be up to James Deneen to carry the team.
Yeah, St. Francis without the 2-time WCL Player of the Year in Gerard Nelson. Only played 2 sets so far this season. Meanwhile, the man setting up Deneen is Buddy Scott, a transfer from Punahou in Hawaii. They got word of him, at least head coach Jonah Carson saying, hey, we got word he's coming our way, and he's been great for them.
He's been absolutely phenomenal, and he is, among his other qualifications, Jack, he is a southpaw, a very rare thing in Bay Area volleyball. But it really adds another dimension. It means that they have actually, almost as if they had another player on the court, a 6th or a 7th player, if you will, and it means that they have a lot more variety in their attack.
Well, St. Francis has won 16 in a row over St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius trying to even the season series here tonight. It's St. Francis and St. Ignatius coming your way next on KMVT Sports.
Massage company, and we bring massage therapy and yoga to the corporate workplace. We started this business in order to bring more awareness to corporations for health and wellness. This is a nice perk that they can offer their employees, and it says, hey, we care about your well-being. We look forward to bringing massage therapy and yoga into your corporate workplace.
And we welcome you back to Alumni Gym, the campus of St. Francis High School, as we get set for St. Ignatius and St. Francis, the second meeting of the season. Why don't we take a look at the starting lineups? First, the visitors of St. Ignatius, who come in league play at 1-8. And you can see here, Cole Briggs is the middle, along with Riley Dunn, Justin Sauter, and John Alexander. We mentioned one of the outsides, the NYU commit, along with Michael, well, I had this before, Michael Majeski. And then Jeremy David is the center. Mark Laxamana is the libero. The head coach of St. Ignatius is Kareem Gilbo in his 5th year now. As far as St. Francis goes, Dylan Nguyen making his first start here in league play. He's the middle, filling in for Thomas Lawler, who's out sick today. Justin Waddell also middle. Christian Cortez the opposite. James Deneen and Mateo Fontana the outsides. And then Buddy Scott is the center. Tony Lee is the libero. Alongside Mike Messner, Jack Benjamin on hand. Mike, we talked a little in the open about what St. Ignatius has to do here, and we would think at least the first set crucial to the success of the road team here today, getting off to a good start.
Well, especially when you look at those road records of both teams, Jack, and we'll talk about those in a minute, but the thing about St. Ignatius, when they get the serve, they can't afford to make those unforced errors like we saw back in March.
So we're awaiting the first serve here. Mateo Fontana is back with it. Actually called a couple of St. Francis basketball games this year, and he's in his second season with the varsity. And we're underway here from Alumni Gym's second meeting of the season. And right off the bat, a block and getting up there, James Deneen.
And that's exactly what St. Ignatius wanted to do. Take the momentum, take the serve, and test out what they've learned, because it's been just about a month since that defeat to St. Francis.
On serve for St. Ignatius, Jeremy David. Good dig from Alexander. Up in the air high, Buddy Scott. He's able to swing from the center position, and he gets himself a kill there. Tied up at 1 here in the first set.
St. Francis answering right back on that one, Jack. See how their serving rotation goes.
Yeah, Buddy Scott, we're talking with Coach Jonah Carson. He said he's not just a center. He gives them an extra attacker as a lefty, and you could see it right there on display as Tony Lee, the libero, is on serve. Alexander bumping it up high. Here's a swing and a good one from Justin Sauter, the junior, in his second season with the team. 2-1 early lead for the visitors of St. Ignatius.
Great attempt to keep that in by Christian Cortez, number 12 there. He's a senior, first-year starter, and he's played both left and right side.
Sauter, after the kill, is on serve. Scott setting up Deneen. We'll see that a lot here tonight. That time to no avail, right off the top of the net and then out. And a good job on the block again by St. Ignatius. They're up 3-1.
I don't know if you mentioned, Jack, that James Deneen also a football player. He's a linebacker and a tight end for this Lancer football squad.
He is. Volleyball, one of those sports, you get a lot of the multi-sport players. There's one sailing long from Alexander, and you figure from St. Ignatius to pull this one off tonight, he's going to have to be very good from that outside position.
Well, he's going to have to be good, and he's going to have to be accurate, too. It's not just muscle, as you were saying. A lot of athletes with a lot of experience in a lot of sports, but you got to get that ball down.
Buddy Scott, the transfer from Punahou in Hawaii, moved here to California. Has his dad, who was the president of the high school, retired. And there's John Alexander with another kill, 4-2, doubling up St. Francis early for St. Ignatius.
But let's see if they can keep that momentum going. This is just exactly what they wanted to do.
On serve now, Mark Laxamana, the junior, starting libero, up in the air and sent over on a free ball. Here's Sauter, and just dinks one just beyond the 10-foot line. Little miscommunication there from the Lancers.
Big mistake there by the Lancers. They just were all playing what Mike Kruko calls the pop-up dance.
You've got the perfect analogy going. The San Francisco Giants back in season now.
Yeah, they're playing tonight, by the way.
There's a good swing and a kill that time. They recently checked in Justin Waddell, sophomore, middle blocker. 5-3, the early lead for St. Ignatius is down to 2.
Waddell may be the best jumper on this Lancer team, and we're going to see him serving here, or pretty soon anyway.
Yeah, that's James Deneen going into the net. He's their best server with that jump serve, but it can be hard to be accurate with it. And you saw right there, just off the top of the net, the points to St. Ignatius. They're up 6-3.
But do you notice, Jack, that he didn't get rattled at all? He just shook that one right off, and that's what you got to do when you have those unforced errors.
Michael Majeski is on serve. Buddy Scott, back set, and a good block that time. John Alexander. Well, he's done it all here early on. The 3 kills give him a block. How about a 7-3 early lead for St. Ignatius?
Yeah, they can't afford to get complacent, though. Not against the Lancers.
Lee, Scott, and just out. Give the kill to Justin Waddell. Again, his second here early on in this first set.
Great dig, though, there by St. Ignatius.
So Waddell will go back to serve.
There's Waddell.
Waddell spins it over. There's a setup. Good stop from Fontana. Scott setting it up. And a good dig again, that time from Majeski. And Fontana unable to get to it at the net. Fontana's in his first year now with the varsity. I mentioned he's been a basketball player with this St. Francis program, and Now transitioning his way into volleyball as he misses that one. An 8-4 early lead for St. Ignatius, and there is what John Alexander can do. That's ace number 15 on the young season for him here in WCL play. And a 9-4 early lead for St. Ignatius, taking it to the Lancers a little bit. A 4-0 run. And Alexander misfiring that time. So 9-5.
Any mail for me while I was gone?
Here's a serve over from Christian Cortez. Oh, and a beautiful take by Cortez, pancake style in the back row. And then Buddy Scott able to send it over. And the point to St. Francis, make it 3 in a row for the Lancers.
And St. Ignatius wasn't expecting that one at all, Jack. I mean, I think they really thought they had that one down, and they had to dig deep in more ways than one to come up with the defense on that one.
Cortez on serve again. Alexander's throwing it up. Sauter. Lee with a dig. Cortez again. High bump, played over. Good block. And now Alexander, and a beautiful tip job that time. Roll shot right over, and Lee unable to get to it.
This is Tony Lee's first year as a starter. He's the captain, not the most outspoken member of the squad, but knows his trade. So he's going to put in a lot of effort tonight.
And a good attempt at that dig, but not enough. How about a 10-6 early lead for St. Ignatius? And a good block at the net that time. Lee able to punch it over. Alexander smashing it down. And a timeout taken by St. Francis. 5-point early lead in the first set for St. Ignatius. And just the start, Mike, we were talking about for St. Ignatius, they needed to get off to a good start. I'd say they've done just that, up by 5.
Well, that's exactly what they needed to do. They needed to establish momentum. They had to play with confidence. And as they've said many times in the past, Jack, nothing succeeds like success. And that's what they've been doing. They've been succeeding in throwing St. Francis off their game. They've played good defense, and they've managed to get shots down they probably shouldn't have had any right to get down. And I think St. Francis is probably just a little bit bewildered. They're thinking, wait a minute, didn't we just play this team a few weeks ago?
They matched up. Way back, I should say, back on March the 14th, at SI, a 4-set win. And these are two teams, St. Francis 1-7 in league play, St. Ignatius 1-8. They don't look like two one-win league teams, but that's how good the WCL is.
Well, they don't look like one-win teams, but they do look like hungry teams. They look like teams that want that second win. They don't want to live with what may be in the minds of some observers a lost season. They want to make this count.
On serve for St. Ignatius, David Madriz. So he's back to serve. Madriz, the sophomore. Here's Scott setting up Cortez. And Alexander able to dig it out of the back row. Sauter on a tip shot. And not enough on it that time. Give the point to St. Francis.
Yeah, that's frustrating when you can't quite do that. You want to fake out your opponents, and you fake yourself out.
Mateo Fontana back to serve again. 11-7 the lead in this first set for St. Ignatius. Here's Alexander spinning one in the back row. A little collision between Fontana and Cortez. Bumped over by Lee. Here's Alexander again, and just deep. So 2 in a row for the Lancers. They're back within 3. The largest lead in this first set has been 5 for the Wildcats of St. Ignatius.
Well, Fontana is relatively new to the team, Jack. He's still learning the game, but you wouldn't think it to look at the way that he approaches those serves and the way he moves around the court.
Still learning the intricacies, especially in that outside hitter position. That's a big, important job. And there is Justin Sauter, who's been good in this first set. 3 kills now for him. And the junior making it happen early on, a 12-8 lead for St. Ignatius.
If he can stay healthy, he may begin a St. Ignatius renaissance when it comes to boys volleyball.
They've been struggling the last couple of years. They're going to have their second straight season under 500 in league play, and that went off the hands of Alexander in the back row. Another kill for St. Francis. 12-9 now.
Well, you're right about the recent records, but it wasn't so long ago, Jack, that the St. Ignatius volleyball team terrorized all the other preps in San Francisco and other places around the West Catholic Athletic League.
Tony Lee back to serve for St. Francis. Down 3 in this first set. Tipped over by Cole Briggs, one of the middles. Goes outside, pushed over well by Deneen, and St. Ignatius able to get to it. Scott hitting on 2 and crushes it down.
And there's your man from Hawaii right there. And that USA development pipeline experience is showing on that shot.
He's a lefty, he's crafty. And one thing that his coach says is he's smart, and you'd think so when you're headed to play volleyball at Harvard. What's the minimum SAT score to get in there?
I don't know, but
perfection is the answer.
I think you got to be pretty smart to play anything at Harvard. Tiddlywinks, polo, anything.
That serve sailing long from Fontana, 13-10 now. Sauter on serve. Lee, Scott, Deneen. Blocked well by Majeski. Free ball for St. Ignatius. Here's Alexander. Double block that time. And then off the hands of Lee. Give the kill to Alexander. His 5th early on here in this first set, and he's taken over.
What I'm still seeing, though, Jack, is a lot of miscommunication among the Lancers. I see collisions. I see people tripping and slipping a little bit. You wonder if they've gotten the practice that they'd wanted.
A joust at the net that time, and back to St. Francis. Free ball over from Lee. Sauter setting it up, and a good job by Briggs. Cole Briggs, the senior, first year on varsity for him. Didn't look like it there. Good elevation. A good job of rolling it over, and a 5-point lead again, their largest of the first set for St. Ignatius.
And here comes Sauter with that serve.
Good job by Lee to control. Deneen. James Deneen, we mentioned he's had to step up in the absence of Gerard Nelson, the 2-time WCL Player of the Year, out with a shoulder injury, and he's done well here in this first set. 15-11. Buddy Scott is back to serve, the lefty. Coming in with 9 aces. Here's Alexander again. He has a lot of different variations on that swinging motion, Mike.
And that's exactly what St. Ignatius wanted. They wanted variety in their offense, and so far they've gotten it. And as you said, Jack, there's a lot of different techniques, but if you get that ball down, that's what's really going to count.
Their coach, Kareem Gilbo, telling us they wanted to be unpredictable here tonight, and they've done just that. Keeping St. Francis off balance. Speaking off balance, Deneen falling into his own bench to try to hit that one.
Oh my goodness. But he doesn't seem to be too shaken up.
6-point lead now, the largest of the first set for St. Ignatius. Mark Laxamana is on serve, the junior. Scott bump set Cortez, and a beautiful dig by the libero Laxamana. Here's Deneen. Able to tool that block and then punch wide into the antenna, give the point to the Lancers.
Amazing effort there. A couple of really good recoveries, and I thought that might have been headed into the Lawson family film room back in the St. Ignatius backcourt.
One of our better rallies here in this first set. Lancers down 5 with their best server on serve in Deneen, and that one just missing wide. Not by much.
Nope. He would have added to his ace tally there.
Meanwhile, Mike, we talked early on about serving errors being a key for avoiding for St. Ignatius. 3 now for St. Francis in the first set.
Well, turnabout's fair play.
There's another error missed by Waddell. All of a sudden, 7-point advantage for St. Ignatius. And another timeout called by Jonah Carson of St. Francis.
And a wise decision to take that timeout with a 7-point deficit. And St. Ignatius being as unpredictable as they have been, I think they've got to just take a breath and try to play their game again and not have it dictated by the Wildcats.
So if you're Jonah Carson in this huddle right now, and actually we're taking a look Why don't we talk about St. Ignatius head coach Kareem Gilboa a little bit now in his 5th season at the helm, up by 7 here on the road. This is a guy who played basketball, actually, at San Jose State. He's an alum of St. Ignatius. I was talking to him earlier. He said, hey, well, I was coaching basketball. They offered me a chance to come over, coach the volleyball, and you can say he's done a good job. It's been up and down. He hasn't had a winning season in league play in 3 years, but his team doing very well here early on.
Well, the thing that I notice about his team so far, Jack, is that it's playing as a team. This is not a series of superstars that are trying to eke out space and trying to have ego battles. They're really functioning much better as a team at the moment than the Lancers are. So a lot of good things to be said about that coach.
So St. Ignatius is on serve. They've got their largest lead of the first set, 19-12. Again, St. Francis took the first meeting between these two teams on March 14th in 4 sets. There's a block. Oh, Riley Dunn at 6'6" did not have to jump, just put his arms up there to knock away Waddell's tip try.
I thought we were going to have a punching bag session right there because I think St. Francis was trying to flick it over. Didn't quite get it, though.
20-12. To say this is a surprising first set is probably an understatement based on how the first matchup went between these two teams. There's a tip, and it was not touched. Was it touched? Oh, now they say it was, and Buddy Scott, the captain of St. Francis, goes over and talks to one of our officials about it. He's arguing the call. What do you think?
Well, I didn't see a touch.
I agree. That's 4 in a row for St. Ignatius, inching closer to a win here in the first set, and a convincing one at that.
And that's exactly what they're going to need.
Sauter, Scott for Deneen. St. Ignatius playing good defense early on. Here's Sauter out of the back row. Justin Sauter has been very good early on, and a 10-point lead for St. Ignatius.
And that's got to be devastating to the St. Francis morale right now. Yes, they've been struggling in league play, but they didn't expect they'd be down this far this early.
Sauter serving, good dig by Lee. Here's Fontana, and a great dig by Laxamana. Pushed over, and that's illegal contact that time. A lift called, so St. Francis stops a 5-0 run.
I'm kind of surprised that that move, you would think with players who have this experienced on the St. Ignatius squad, you'd think they'd know better.
Maybe trying to mix it up, find an open alleyway. There's Sauter, just long.
I think trying to mix it up too much.
Was it tipped, actually? Hey, you know what? That one got tipped. It was long, but it just got touched.
I didn't see that, but the referees are closer to it than we are, Jack.
So 23-13, 2 points away for St. Ignatius.
A couple of breaks there for the Wildcats, too.
Scott for Fontana. You can tell Fontana in his first year doesn't quite have the power yet on that swing. Here he is again.
Once again, it's about learning the intricacies of the game, isn't it?
It's Alexander. Good dig by Deneen. Fontana again, and that sails long. And well, they found him 3 straight times, unable to convert. And a set point for St. Ignatius, up 24-13.
And wouldn't you like to be a fly on the floor to hear what these two coaches are going to be saying to their teams during the intermission? I know I would.
How about that serve from Alexander? Spins it on the tape. And the first set in convincing fashion to the Wildcats of St. Ignatius. 25-13. Coming back with the second set in just a bit on KMVT Sports.
Massage company, and we bring massage therapy and yoga to the corporate workplace. We started this business in order to bring more awareness to corporations for health and wellness. This is a nice perk that they can offer their employees, and it says, hey, we care about your well-being. We look forward to bringing massage therapy and yoga into your corporate workplace.
KMVT Sports would like to thank our sponsor, Altos Mobile Massage. Massage can change your mental and physical state and inspire you to give power and energy to solutions. Altos Mobile Massage brings the massage to you. Sometimes a little pressure is a good thing. A dominant first set for St. Ignatius, 25-13. As we look at the final point, and Mike, it was John Alexander dominating for St. Ignatius.
It's really symbolic of a lot of what's happened in this first set, Jack, because you have the Lancers looking prepared, and then nobody wants to go for that open shot. And it gets the bottom corner of the court. They get that ace, and they seal the win for the first set. And I think that's just emblematic of a lot of what happened in that first set between these two teams.
It was relatively close midway through the set. We had it 16-12, and then 8 of the final 9 points going to St. Ignatius.
You know, the averages between these two teams, Jack, usually St. Ignatius has a 5-point average lead in the first set over opponents like St. Francis. This one, 12, more than twice what they usually get. I don't know if that says more about the Lancers or more about the Wildcats, but it's going to be a great second set to see how these two teams respond to this situation.
And I was going to ask you too, Mike, if you're Jonah Carson, head coach of St. Francis, what was the key adjustment you think to make for this second set, at least starting out?
Well, what they're going to need to do is they're going to need to talk to each other. And I don't mean that figuratively, Jack. I mean that literally. They're going to have to say, all right, who's going to get this? Who's going to be over? Who's going to be covering for who?
Scott back set, Deneen putting it down.
And I think that message might have gotten through now that I come to think of it.
Well, that's a decent combination to go to. Your star center, your star outside hitter. The result, first point of the set to St. Francis.
That's a good 1-2 punch between Deneen and Scott. They've got to keep that up if they're going to get back into this thing.
St. Francis, I mentioned, coming in just 1-7 in WCL play, but they've had some close calls. They've lost a couple 5 centers. And that serve sailing wide from Tony Lee. Another service error, 5 now in the match, Mike, for the Lancers.
So it's almost a mirror image of what we saw back on March 14th, where it was the Wildcats making all the mistakes.
Absolutely right. Lee, a high set for Deneen, and a good block that time from Briggs. Deneen again, and Briggs again. How about the effort that time of the senior Cole Briggs?
Well, the momentum of those shots was just too much for the Lancer defense, and again, they need to play better heads-up ball on that. You know, you talked about John Alexander a little earlier on. 5 kills and 2 aces in the first set for that young man. So those credentials are obviously showing.
They say the dig from David, the ball hit the floor first.
I would agree with that call.
Close call, but it goes to St. Francis. So we're not at actually 2-1, I beg your pardon. 2-1 St. Francis.
Or 2-2.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it should be 2-2. The scoreboard took a second to change. Buddy Scott serve sails long. And another service error, already 2 in their first 3 serves here for St. Francis.
Not a good sign for the Lancers.
Back on serve, Laxamana, the libero. Scott back set, Deneen punishing another one.
And with authority, I think he got about 2 feet over the net at that farthest extension.
Does a really good job of rearing back and varying the way he hits the ball. He's had power. We've seen him with a couple of roll shots, Mike. He's been very good, and now he goes back to serve. Free ball for the Lancers. Scott for Cortez. And that time, it was just a matter of Alexander being as high as the net was, a little bit too low for Cortez.
Yeah, Riley Dunn was in on that block, too.
The set was a little low as well from Buddy Scott on the back set.
Again, you see more teamwork from the Wildcats at this point than from the Lancers.
Lee, Scott, Cortez, and Alexander, and Nunn were right there for it. Dunn, I beg your pardon.
Well, we're in a Catholic school, so you're saying Nunn makes a lot of sense.
I thought no one would catch that, but not anymore.
Don't forget, you're talking to a teacher here.
You're right. Laxamana for Alexander, spins it back towards Scott, and now Cortez denied by Alexander.
And that may be the 3rd rally in a row where we've seen that picket fence defense, and it's working charms for the Wildcats right now. And I don't know if the Lancers have an answer for it right now, to be honest with you.
St. Ignatius gets Alexander involved. Good block by Cortez and Waddell up front. And then the kill put down. Good job by Justin Sauter again. And 4 in a row for St. Ignatius.
And I think we got a timeout, Jack.
Yeah, requires another timeout called by Jonah Larson. He's using up all his timeouts here early on.
Well, understandable that he would. Whatever message he's trying to send to his team, it's not getting across. Because what we're seeing in the second set, Jack, almost identical what we saw in the first. With St. Ignatius, you're seeing fluidity, teamwork, great intuition, good tempo kind of ball, and amazing defense. And the Lancers, what I'm seeing so far, I don't know if you'll agree with me, has been more of the sledgehammer attack. They've been relying on James Deneen to get those kills, but we're not seeing a whole lot of other dimensions to their offense tonight, at least not so far.
Well, they've obviously been trying to replace Jerron Nelson, the WCL two-time player of the year, out with a shoulder injury, but I mean, part of it has been the predictability factor here tonight. They've been trying to, basically just trying to force feed Deneen. Not a lot of openings there, and this is a team, too, it's surprising when you look at St. Francis this season. I was looking at their track record going back. It's pretty remarkable. How about this? 111 and 12 in the previous 3 years combined. This year already, they've got 14 losses.
That's just unspeakable when you look at the tradition that surrounds St. Francis athletics, including volleyball, that they would have that kind of a cascade. And speaking of cascades, that one just hit the floor. So a point for the Lancers.
Good job by Mateo Fontana. 48-1 in WCL play the previous 4 years for Jonah Carson's group at St. Francis. This year, 1-7.
Now, the Alumni Association is not going to be too happy about that.
If it was college basketball, the NBA, you might think about getting a coach replaced or something like that. But Jonah Carson's one of the best in the WCL. I think he's fine.
Well, if it were a business, I'd also say I was a very unhappy stockholder. I can tell you that.
Alexander on serve, 8-4 the lead for St. Ignatius. And that one's sailing long. 8-5. St. Francis has trailed most of this match.
It has been a more even set, but that has been as much about miscues from St. Ignatius as it has about success from St. Francis.
St. Ignatius taking set one, 25-13. Sauter. Deneen in the back row. Scott back set Cortez. And a net violation called on St. Ignatius.
That's frustrating. Did you get who that was called on, Jack?
I think they got Sauter, actually.
I think you're right.
Getting up there. Floating serve, sails long from Cortez. Another service error. Jonah Carson must be shaking his head on the bench right now for St. Francis. His group, 8 service errors in a little more than a set early on.
And if we're going by actual chronological time, that's in the space of about half an hour, Jack. So you can do the math on how often they're happening. Not to pile on, because this is a very talented ball club, but you can't make those kinds of mistakes if you're going to be a contender in the West Catholic Athletic League.
A little confusion here on who the point was for. It looked initially like the shot from Fontana sailed long without a touch. That's what they call it. So St. Francis was back within 2 at 8-6, couple in a row for St. Ignatius. And they're up by 4, and that serve not even close.
That was David Madriz on the serve there.
Yep. The sophomore, 5'4", defensive specialist. 10-7. And Fontana back to serve, stand still, knuckleball. Oh, how about Jeremy David? Showing the full array of moves there from that center position. His first year as a center, that's not an easy thing to do, step in there and start setting, and he's done a good job of it for Kareem Gilbo and company.
Well, and Jeremy's only 5'10", so he's certainly not the biggest man on the court by a long shot, but what he lacks in height, he makes up for in just pure athleticism.
You compare him on the other side of the net with Buddy Scott, who's 6'6" for St. Francis. You're right, it's a huge advantage, obviously, to be taller as a center. 11-8 the lead for St. Ignatius. Tony Lee, the libero, on serve. Received by Sauter. Back set to Sauter. Tipped up in the air by Waddell, and then Scott blocked pretty well there by Briggs. I don't know if he touched it, but at least was in the area and maybe heard some footsteps if you're Buddy Scott.
Looked as if Buddy Scott might have bent a finger or something right there. He appears to be okay, but didn't look happy.
Lee sending up Deneen. What you're starting to see here from St. Francis, getting out of system. Talking with Jonah Carson, he wants his team to play in system. You look at where Lee's having to set the ball to Deneen from. These are hard sets to make.
They are, and again, I don't know if they'd be having any better luck with Jared, because the ball is just going so fast, and that is another aspect or another attribute of this St. Ignatius team is speed. They're able to get shots in that I don't think St. Francis has really been conditioned for.
Scott the serve. Alexander the kill.
And John Alexander is a wiry guy, 6'5", 170, and leads the team in kills, and he's a member of the Bay to Bay Volleyball Club. So this is somebody who's been around Bay Area volleyball, and it showed.
He's the one club player on this St. Ignatius team, at least the one who plays regularly and has played the last 4 years. Third-year varsity member, second-year starter. Scott setting, no one there. He was really just trying to bump it and punch it to someone,
and nobody there to receive that pass.
Yeah, 6-point lead again for St. Ignatius. They've just controlled the tempo, controlled the match. They're up by 6, already up 1-0. Laxamana served. Tipped over by Cortez, a free ball again. And on the block, Waddell into the net. 16-9 for St. Ignatius. This has been dominance, and another timeout called by Jonah Carson.
And if I had been Jonah Carson, I would have called the timeout right about now, because what they've tried so far, it isn't working. And they've got to rearrange their thinking, and they've got to take a deep breath and size up this opposition a little bit better than they have been.
Here's one thing to consider for you too, Mike. The first time these two matched up, I mentioned a 4-set win for St. Francis. It was young in the season, but St. Francis didn't even have Buddy Scott in that game. They've got Buddy Scott in this match, and it's been domination, even with the center who's headed to Harvard for St. Francis. If you're Jonah Carson, we can see him now, third season. Seems like this, you're getting out of system. Your players have been discombobulated early on. What are you telling your group here to try to get a run going?
Well, you're going to tell them to keep communicating. That's one thing that you can control. But what you can't control at this point is during 30-second, 45-second timeouts, you can't create a new dimension to your offense if it isn't there. And right now you've got James Deneen and Buddy Scott, as you mentioned, a great 1-2 punch. But right now we're not seeing a whole lot else in their arsenal.
Serve from Laxamana. Here's Cortez, denied by Dunn. It's been domination in the second set for St. Ignatius. 17-9. Laxamana again to serve.
I think there's a new Lancer player on the court right now.
Yeah, you're right. Just into the game, Justin Huang. And another point to St. Ignatius. 5-0 run now.
Justin Huang, we don't know a whole lot about him. He's a freshman, his first year on the varsity, 6'1", 150 outside hitter. Let's see what kind of tricks he has up his sleeve.
Lee setting up Huang. Alexander now blocked by Waddell and Deneen. Alexander, free ball for St. Francis. Scott Deneen, and blocked again. Boy, that one ricocheted quickly right into the face of Buddy Scott. 6 in a row for St. Ignatius.
And they keep trying to feed Deneen. They keep hoping that he'll be able to jump over the St. Ignatius defense, and it isn't working.
St. Ignatius taking set 1, 25-13. They lead the second set 19-9. Service long.
Make that 19-10.
Yeah, Laxamana sprays it deep. So Deneen on serve, and if you're going to get a run going for St. Francis, Deneen is the one to try to do it. 14 aces coming in. He's got one tonight already. And that will not do the job. Low part of the net that time in the jump serve.
Well, it comes back to the whole idea of multidimensionality. We're talking about James Deneen. He leads the team in kills and service aces, but then there's not a whole lot of other distribution among the other statistics on this Lancer squad.
Good job by Fontana to keep that ball alive. Loxamana, the set. David did a good job to keep it alive, and then Scott bumped it over for St. Francis. Low set that time for Dunn, and somehow it falls. He gives a little wry smile after that one, Mike.
Hey, you got to take these victories where you can get them. Jack, have you noticed that they've been trying to attack on the right post all night long? The Lancers have, and more often than not, St. Ignatius has been able to defend it. What that says to me is that the Wildcats have spent a lot more time in the film room than the Lancers have.
And they've had a lot of trouble as well, Mike, on the serve-receive game. Fontana unable to get that one. 22-10. This has been a shocker early on in this match.
And this is really turning into a rout. Oh, my goodness.
Well, when it's your night, those kinds of things happen. And a little smile that time given by Michael Majeski. 2 points away from a 2-0 lead for St. Ignatius.
And the look on these Lancers' faces, I think they're just saying, we didn't come here prepared for this.
Serve sails long that time for Majeski, so maybe law of averages there. You get one to bounce off the top of the net and down. Next one sails deep.
There you go.
23-11.
So good things do happen.
You're right. On serve now, Luke Meyer, another sub coming in, sophomore, first year on the team. David for Alexander, and that's too easy. Perfect set, perfect placement. Set point.
You could have driven the Romanian army through that gap that was left in the St. Francis defense. I'm telling you. Just miles and miles of
I should have known the history references were coming. It was only a matter of time. Set point again for St. Ignatius. And Alexander just serve long.
I think he was a little excited about getting that set point.
A little amped up maybe. Justin Huang is back to serve. He'll try to keep St. Francis from falling into a 2-0 hole. Laxamana, David tipping it over. That's beautifully done by the center. And the senior finishes off set number 2 in style for St. Ignatius. 25-13 and 25-12. 2-0 lead for St. Ignatius as they try to stop a 16-game losing streak against St. Francis. We're coming back with the third set in just a bit on KMVT Sports.
Massage company, and we bring massage therapy and yoga to the corporate workplace. We started this business in order to bring more awareness to corporations for health and wellness. This is a nice perk that they can offer their employees, and it says, hey, we care about your well-being. We look forward to bringing massage therapy and yoga into your corporate workplace.
Yeah, we welcome you back to Alumni Gym here at St. Francis High School, and what has been dominance so far from St. Ignatius. They lead 2-0. They take the second set 25-12 after a 25-13 first set. And as we look at the highlights here, St. Francis trying to work the right side, Mike. St. Ignatius having none of it. They've
been doing that all night, Jack, and it really has not paid off for them. By contrast, when you look at the St. Ignatius attack, and especially the St. Ignatius defense, almost predictable, but the St. Francis Lancers just don't have an answer for it right now. They've been trying to make that attack on the right post, and every single time Riley Dunn has been there to keep it out, and they just haven't been able to score points tonight.
St. Francis has had one lead in this match, Mike. It was 1-0 in the second set. That is how dominant this has been. It's been, you mentioned the blocking from Riley Dunn. How about Alexander, the NYU commit? If you are St. Francis now, this is do or die time for Jonah Carson and his group. Let's see what kind of adjustments they make here in the third set.
Well, they're going to have to pull some tricks out of their bag very, very deep. They're going to have to reach down, to use that metaphor, because everything that they've thrown at these St. Ignatius Wildcats so far, it really hasn't worked too well.
So St. Ignatius trying to even up this season series. I mentioned on March 14th when these two first matched up, a 4-set win for St. Francis. The Lancers have beaten St. Ignatius 16 consecutive times.
I think that's Mateo Fontana who's going to be starting off serving for the Lancers. Am I right?
It is.
All right.
The junior sends it over. We're underway in the third set. And Briggs. Now, it looked like he got tipped. And they say it was deep.
But as we've seen tonight, Jackie, you cannot rely on mistakes from St. Ignatius if you want to win a ball game.
Fontana floating it over. Good job to dig it by Alexander. Sauter! Another kill, is 6th. Tied up at 1 here in the third set.
Are you noticing, Jack, that the St. Ignatius bench is really coming alive tonight? And nothing succeeds like success. They're really into this game, and they can smell blood in the water.
They've had a lot to cheer about as well.
That they have.
Scott setting it up, and into the game now. Jackson Marr, actually, I beg your pardon, it was Dylan Nguyen. And lunging out of bounds that time, Tony Lee unable to get to it. Another point for St. Ignatius.
That's Jeremy David, I believe, who's serving right now.
David, who finished off the second set with a beautiful job of just tipping it with the left hand, and this time his serve doing the job again. 10 service aces. On the other side, a lot of trouble receiving the serve here tonight, Mike, for the Lancers.
Well, as I've said, there's a lot of airiness in this St. Francis defense. So there's a lot of opportunities that the Wildcats have had to poke it through, although the Lancers managed to get a point on that one.
Buddy Scott, maybe the plan here is to get him more involved. Now, he is their center. I'm thinking maybe the plan here is give him more freedom to try to hit on 2 as the center.
Well,
let him loose.
Well, let's watch that right side and see if they try to shift. You were talking about what the strategy is. They got to get away from that right side. They've got to vary their offense the same way St. Ignatius has.
Tony Lee, one of the senior captains, sends it away. Alexander, and an overpass. David back set. Sauter blocked. Good job by Deneen to get up.
And that is right out of the St. Ignatius playbook right there, to get that defense on the St. Francis left, the St. Ignatius right. That's what's worked for the Wildcats. Maybe what's good for the Goose is good for the Gander.
Tied up at 3 in set 3. Lee again. Sauter. A free ball and just put down by Deneen. He was up there against David, and a mismatch of 6'5" against 5'10".
I think that hit the man's head.
Might have. So the second lead of the night so far for St. Francis, I should say, at 4-3. They led 1-0 in set 2. Fontana, a high one. Scott, back set. Good job digging it out by Cortez. They go wide for Deneen, spinning it in a beautiful dig by Alexander. David up top for Sauter. Lee is there. Scott back set Cortez. How about the job to keep it alive by David? And they call an underneath violation against Majeski. Give the point to St. Francis. That's 4 in a row for the Lancers to take a 5-3 lead.
Now we're beginning to see maybe some cracks in the foundation of St. Ignatius, because now you're seeing some unforced errors on their side. Shades of March 14th.
Yeah, St. Francis has come out re-energized. Here's Sauter. Beautiful dig by Fontana. Scott out wide for Deneen and blocked again by Briggs. How about Cole Briggs?
And once again, now they're trying to go at the left post, but the same defense is there.
Stops a 4-0 run. St. Ignatius back within 1 with Sauter on serve. Scott off the joust and bumped over by Cortez and blasted home by Alexander.
Oh, that was a hanging curveball. You can't bump it over to this St. Ignatius squad and expect that you're going to get anything except volleyball crammed down your throat.
Again, the serve receptions have just been off. Look at it. Another free ball. And another point for St. Ignatius, Mike. The serve-receive game, it just hasn't been sharp tonight for the Lancers.
No, you'd think that they figure, well, as soon as we can receive it, we'll just go with our setting and our 1-2 punch that you and I have been talking about all night tonight. And it just hasn't worked out that way.
Credit the serving of St. Ignatius as Deneen able to stop that little run developing for St. Ignatius. We're knotted again at 6 here in the third set. If in case you're just joining us, 2-0 lead for the visitors of St. Ignatius, 25-13, 25-12 the scores in sets 1 and 2. Buddy Scott, the lefty, sprays it long.
You know, this combination of Deneen and Scott, I don't want to make it sound like they're not effective, because they certainly are. They have the athleticism, they know how to jump, and they know how to play this game of high school volleyball. It's just been erratic all night tonight, Jack.
Fontana from his knees, good bump set by Scott. And Lee unable to get to it, a lunging Scott, and another point for St. Ignatius.
And a timeout called. And I believe that was St. Francis who called that one, Jack.
Yeah, Jonah Carson's been the one calling all the timeouts here today. He's had the reasons to call them. His team down 2-0, now down 8-6 here in this third set.
And let's see what we have to say here. KMVT Sports is brought to you with help from our sponsor, Altos Mobile Massage. Massage has been proven to reduce stress and improve well-being. Healthier and happier employees do better work. Altos Mobile Massage brings the massage to you. Sometimes a little pressure is a good thing.
Alongside Mike Messner, Jack Benjamin on hand. Third set from Alumni Gym at St. Francis High School. It's the St. Ignatius Wildcats up 2-0, 25-13, 25-12 in sets 1 and 2, up 8-6 here in this third set. And Mike, they have controlled the tempo of this game, and they're getting everything they want offensively as Laxamana serves it away.
And they've controlled the serving, which has really been the key to the way that they've almost run the score up, at least in the first two. St. Francis making it a little tighter here in the third set, but the story of this has been all St. Ignatius offense.
4-0 run for St. Ignatius to go up 9-6. Serve goes long from Laxamana. Lots of service problems on both sides here tonight. As Deneen is back to serve, and St. Francis could sure use a run with their star senior hitting it away. And that won't do it. Sails long.
Well, now they're going to have to do what really counts for St. Francis right now, is can they receive the serves and then control the ball, because once they can do that, that 1-2 punch will be working.
Oh, that one they got away with. Again, trouble from Tony Lee, the libero, to handle it, and it just squeezes over, so give the point to the Lancers.
Well, if they can get control of it, Deneen and Scott, I don't think there's a better combination in this league. The problem is they haven't been able to get the ball effectively between those two where it needs to be.
Luke Meyer, the sophomore, serving, and into the net for Jeremy David. Good job of pressuring by Fontana and the recently checked in Dylan Nguyen. One thing we should note too, it's not just Gerard Nelson, the two-time WCL Player of the Year, that St. Francis is without. They're without one of their starting blockers in Thomas Lawler. So that's been a big loss for them tonight. You can see how they felt it, especially on the defensive end, and there's another point for St. Francis.
But I'll tell you this, I mean, the Lancers are not going to go home tonight and try to think up excuses. They're really going to have to pull together with the ammunition that they have and try to make something out of the rest of this season.
Well, they were down by 4 earlier in this set. They've tied it at 10. Here's Sauter. And just out of the reach of Deneen. 11-10 for St. Ignatius.
And I think that's Justin Waddell that was coming in. Nope. Waddell's back out.
Yeah, they were changing rotation there defensively, so Cortez moves back row. Alexander back to serve for the Wildcats, up 1. Spins it off the top of the net. Back set Cortez, tipping it over. Beautiful dig, Laxamana. Here is Alexander, roll shot. And Cortez lunging, unable to get to it.
Well, the good news is the Lancers were able to make a defensive adjustment. The bad news, it was too late.
12-10 for St. Ignatius. trying to get a 3-set sweep here to end the 16-game head-to-head losing streak against St. Francis. And there's another service ace for Alexander, his 5th of this match.
And the hits just keep coming, don't they?
Spins it to Cortez. Scott leaving it for Fontana. Good dig by Alexander. He's doing it all. Sauter. Beautiful dig by Deneen, side style. And then miscommunication again from St. Francis. Fontana and the libero, Lee, they just ran into each other, Mike.
And that's been happening all night with the Lancers, that they haven't been coordinated. They haven't known who was playing what position. And the scoreboard's showing it, Jack.
It's a St. Francis team that's relatively young. They're the reigning CCS champions, but they're getting handled tonight on their home court, now 15-10 in favor of St. Ignatius.
Well, this is one that's going to hurt this Lancer squad for quite a while.
34-3 last year for the Lancers, 11-1 in league play. They haven't had a finish worse than first in the WCL in 4 years.
No fooling.
Sauter, just long. 15-11.
Well, the Lancers really were realizing at this point that they're running out of gas, that if they're going to make any, they're going to get back into this game at all, it's got to be now.
Well, they've got a serving specialist back there now, Corey Yang. 5 aces coming in. Sauter. Good dig there. Yang setting up Fontana. And dug by Laxamana. Tipped over. Fontana. And let's see.
I think that may have been a net violation.
Yep, you're right. Net violation called on Fontana. 16-11 in favor of St. Ignatius here in the 3rd set, already up 2-0. They've won 6 of the last 7 points after it was tied at 10.
And they're not letting up either, Jack. I mean, they're still got a lot of variety in their offense. They're still able to handle most of what the Lancers are throwing at them.
And how about moving the center, Buddy Scott, out wide that time, Mike? That's an adjustment from Jonah Carson, head coach.
Well, let's see if it pays off for them. They have kept it close. I mean, we've seen gaps of 10 and 12 points. This one is down to 4.
Sauter blocked and then tipped out by Scott.
If you don't have a good follow-up to that double block, you might as well just give the point away. And if they all they're doing is just knocking it back and they don't get it back over the net, it's not going to do you much good.
Yeah, the combo block has been struggling here tonight. Yang for Deneen. That left side left wide open. They mix it up that time for St. Francis, and look what happens when they go to the left.
Well, now you're wondering, why didn't we do this all night? But they were successful on that one. Let's see if they can build on that. They've still got a deficit to overcome, though, Jack.
Well, they've moved Scott to one of the outside positions. They've got Yang setting their backup. Here's Lease on serve. Sauter, and looked like maybe a lift that time.
Yeah, it looked like that.
Double contact.
Kiss of death.
So St. Francis back within 3. Tony Lee serving, senior captain. Second on the team, coming in with 9 aces. David, a low set for Sauter. Free ball here for St. Francis. Deneen again. Back-to-back for the junior, and back within 2 for St. Francis on a 3-0 run.
And maybe they've found the solution. Maybe they've seen the weakness in this St. Ignatius club, and there haven't been a lot of them that we've seen tonight.
Working that left side back-to-back times. Lee again on serve. David for Sauter, blocked. Double block that time, Waddell and Scott. Alexander, 10-foot swing. Bump set for Scott. Spinning it. Now David, Sauter out wide and throws it wide right. So the adjustments, Mike, 4 in a row, 5 out of 6. Back within 1 for St. Francis at 17-16.
And that's not something you can pin on St. Ignatius. That has been St. Francis achieving it. They've earned those points.
It's been on the arm of Tony Lee during that 4-0 run, but he misfires. And that hurts. To have a rally end is, you have 4 straight points, that's fine if it ends, but to have it end with a service error hurts.
Well, and if you look at the scoreboard, they're still down 2 after all of that.
Yeah, could have tied with that point. Instead, down 2 and back to serve Sauter, who's had 5 aces already tonight.
That's got to be disheartening.
The question is, can they receive? Lee does well there. How about the quick set on 1? Oh, a good job setting the middle, and Waddell puts it down, his 2nd kill of the match.
Well, Waddell's an amazingly quick guy. He's also a basketball player and 6 feet tall and a sophomore. So he's a diamond in the rough.
David for Alexander, a beautiful dig by Lee. Bumped over on a free ball. It'll have to be a defensive point for St. Francis, and they do just that. How about Waddell? A kill and a block, and we're knotted at 18 here in this 3rd set.
Well, the Lancers refusing to go quietly tonight, Jack.
2-0 lead for St. Ignatius. If you're just joining us, 25-13 and 25-12. And Mike, they've turned the intensity up a notch here in this 3rd set. They were trailing once by as much as 5. We're now tied at 18. Here's Buddy Scott floating it over. High up in the air for David, back set. Majeski, and kept alive by St. Francis. How did that not hit the ground? Setting the middle again. Fontana, Scott, back set, Cortez. And Sauter is there off the ceiling.
That ceiling's always going to be there.
Free ball for St. Francis, out wide for Deneen. Off the net and down.
And I don't think he meant to play the angles on that one, but it certainly worked. And look at that score. Lancers back on top for maybe only the 3rd time in this whole match.
3-0 run for St. Francis. They've come all the way back, once trailing by as much as 5 in this 3rd set. They're now up by 1, 19-18. And Mike, we've talked about a bunch of different things that they could do to flip it. It seems like the adjustment moving Buddy Scott from that sole center position to out wide. Now him and Deneen, your 2 best available hitters, obviously without the services of the 2-time WCL Player of the Year in Gerard Nelson. And those 2 have been doing the job here in this 3rd set.
And they've done it perfectly. And not only the moving from wide out to the center, but the fact that they're attacking that left post now, not the right. Maybe they're seeing that there's not as much skill with St. Ignatius, or that St. Ignatius has gotten a little complacent. 1 of 2.
Meanwhile, Kareem Gilbo calling that timeout for St. Ignatius to try to reorder his troops. Took the first 2 sets in commanding fashion, which is a rarity for them, especially in WCL play, where they had come in just 1-8.
Well, I'd also be reminding them that they're so close to wrapping this game up that they can't pull out their tent. They can't stop now. They have to go back, finish off the Lancers, and go home.
And it's really been serve receiving. That's dictated this match so far. Buddy Scott on serve. St. Francis leading by 1, down 2-0. And that one flies over. How about the luck that time for St. Ignatius?
And that is just pure dumb luck. There is no other way to describe that. And St. Francis is just saying, what do we got to do?
Tied at 19 in what's become a back-and-forth 3rd set.
Well, you mentioned it's serve and return, as it so often is in high school volleyball.
Scott, a beautiful back set to Deneen, and he's starting to find some holes. Able to tool the block that time of Sauter and Alexander.
Well, maybe what they're discovering, if they can't go through the St. Ignatius defense, maybe they got to go around it.
2019, Deneen, that good jump serve.
Net cord on that one.
David for Sauter.
Ooh.
Tipped up by Dunn. A good job to keep it alive, and then a free ball for St. Francis. Overpass, and too easy for Alexander.
Big mistake there by the Lancers. They fed that hanging curveball right into the St. Ignatius offense.
Again for John Alexander, his 11th kill of the match. Tied at 20. St. Francis, I mentioned, has won 16 in a row against St. Ignatius, including earlier this year in 4 sets.
Well, they have a long way to go if they're going to make it 17 in a row.
Scott for Deneen. Dunn got a piece of it. A bump set backward. And now Scott leaves it. How about a double set up for Fontana?
On the left side.
Laxamana has to go to his knees. Alexander denied and kept alive by St. Ignatius with Sauter rolling it over. Scott out wide, Fontana tipping with the left hand. David Sauter blocked in the back. Here's Alexander again. Every time St. Francis makes a run, John Alexander ends it.
And that may be the longest rally we've had all night, because both of these teams, St. Ignatius sensing victory, the Lancers desperately trying to stay in.
St. Ignatius by 1, trying to get a 3-set sweep. Fontana, dug by Laxamana. David for Sauter in the back row. Scott, Deneen, and way long for Deneen. Just when I said how good his accuracy has been in the later part of this third set, that one not close.
I think fatigue is an element in this, Jack, because if you've been playing with the intensity that these young men have, you're going to lose some perspective. Your muscles are tired. You're not going to be able to make those magnificent gold medal kinds of strikes every time.
So St. Francis had taken a couple leads on different occasions in this third set. All of a sudden, down again by 2 points, 22-20. First 2 sets, if you're just joining us, going to St. Ignatius 25-13, 25-12. We see here the St. Ignatius huddle around their coach, Kareem Gilbo, now just 3 points away, Mike, from not only taking this match in convincing sweep fashion, but from ending a 16-game losing streak to one of their WCL rivals.
So they're about to make some history if they can carry it off. But the thing about St. Ignatius is they can't get complacent. Even though they're only 3 points away, you can never, ever, ever count out a St. Francis Lancers squad. Not in any sport. Volleyball, football, you name it, they're always going to come back at you.
I've called my share of comebacks just in the last year or so. Saw a game here, must have been 3 months ago, against Sacred Heart Cathedral. The basketball team was down 20, came back to win by 15. That's how the WCL works as well. So much talent all over the place. Majeski on serve for St. Ignatius. And a block on Waddell from Dunn. Dunn was there again, but tips into the net. And they kill to Fontana.
And again, the left side becoming the point of attack. So now it's St. Ignatius that's going to need to make some adjustments if they want to polish this one off. Just a 1 point lead now, Jack.
Served away by Luke Meyer. Here is Alexander with another kill.
And that one almost ricocheted right onto our table.
He plastered that one, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He's going to have paint from the wall on that ball.
Tell you what, they're going to get a pretty good one at NYU come next year. Moving to some cold weather.
I think we might want to move back there and announce those games. What do you think?
Why not? 23-21, 2 points away for St. Ignatius as Cortez tips it over. What a dig from Laxamana. Scott setting the middle that time. Knocked up in the air, and a bit of a break that time for St. Francis that St. Ignatius had no chance to dig it out.
Well, that might be the 6th man, or the 7th man rather, on this St. Francis team. The ceiling of the St. Francis gym, because that ceiling knows which team it's on, doesn't it?
Dylan Nguyen getting the kill. So St. Francis setting the middle a bit here in this third set. Corey Yang, the serving specialist, sends it away. Sauter, good job by Deneen. Fontana again, rolls it over. David for Alexander, and that one is down.
They did get it, and that's going to bring us to a match point.
A couple of match points upcoming for St. Ignatius. 24-22 here in this third set. 13-12 the scores in sets 1 and 2. On serve, David Madriz trying to end the match and end a 16-game losing streak to St. Francis. Scott, and that one sails long, and St. Ignatius has done it. They stopped the 16-game losing streak against St. Francis with a dominant 3-set sweep, 25-13, 25-12, and 25-22 in a very convincing, dominant display of volleyball here at Alumni Gym. We'll come back and wrap this one up here on KMVT Sports. Again, 3-set sweep for St. Ignatius on KMVT Sports.
Massage company, and we bring massage therapy and yoga to the corporate workplace. We started this business in order to bring more awareness to corporations for health and wellness. This is a nice perk that they can offer their employees, and it says, hey, we care about your well-being. We look forward to bringing massage therapy and yoga into your corporate workplace.
And we welcome you back to Alumni Gym on the campus of St. Francis High School as the St. Ignatius Wildcats in dominant fashion end their 16-game losing streak to St. Francis with a 3-sets-to-none sweep, 25-13, 25-12, and then 25-22. Mike Mester, Jack Benjamin here with you, and Mike, dominance all around for St. Ignatius. For you, what was the key here tonight for the Wildcats to even up this series to stop that 16-game losing streak?
Well, Jack, there were two keys to this to me. For the first one is controlled service. The Wildcats almost completely eliminated those unforced errors that you and I have talked about tonight. Very, very few points given away to the Lancers the way they were in that March game. The second part of it was variety on offense. You really didn't see a whole lot of predictability within the Wildcats. They had different schemes. They had different forms of attack. They had better ball control, so there was different ball placement in almost every rally. There was just no way for the Lancers to guess what the Wildcats were going to do, and it paid off with a straight set victory.
And you talk about the unpredictability. Let's check the highlights here.
Yeah.
And really dominance all around. Early on, though, in that third set, St. Francis able to hang in. It was tied at 10. And then down the stretch, St. Ignatius, the blocking ability of Riley Dunn. John Alexander doing what he does, finishing with 12 kills. And then you can see here later on in the set on match point, the eruption on the bench there for St. Ignatius. That's what happens when you've lost to a team 16 straight times. A lot of frustration and jubilation on the sideline. A great win here for Kareem Gilbo for a team that was looking for just their second win in league play.
And now they have it. And to break that 16-game streak, you got to believe that the Wildcats knew about that history before they came in. Some of those games before these boys even were at St. Ignatius. But now they've broken that. They've made some history tonight, and they have something to build on for the rest of this season.
First win for St. Ignatius over the rival St. Francis since March 29th of 2011. Quite a while, more than 7 years for the St. Ignatius Wildcats team. As we wrap this one up here on KMVT Sports, a lot of people to thank, including all of our crew, our producer, director extraordinaire, Tyler Weist. We just had all the film awards. We should have gotten him in there. I don't know how. The graphics.
Well, we got to talk to the Academy,
the
don't
graphics crew of Bill Snow, along with our Flucky. You know what we call that our do-it-all man, Tim Erskine. I don't know where he is, but somewhere he's smiling when he reads that name on the screen, I
think his new name should be Swiss Army Knife.
And of course, our great cameraman, CJ Rullo, standing by. He is, of course, the man and doing a great job filming us all night. A big thanks to St. Francis High School, as well as St. Ignatius, and the two coaches, including Jonah Carson from St. Francis and Kareem Gilbo from St. Ignatius. For my partner, Mike Mester, and everyone at KMVT Sports, Jack Benjamin, saying so long from Alumni Gym, where St. Ignatius beats St. Francis in dominant fashion with a 3-sets-to-none sweep.